You can see from the Christmas tree on my right-hand side that it's the new year, and that obviously I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year, and in some cases a happier new year. My name's David Eggins. I work for a small organisation, Temper Domestic Violence, delivering work with domestic abusers. It's work that we've been doing for the last 26 years. About this time, 26 years ago, I went into the probation service in Northampton and told them that we were working with domestic abusers, or we just completed our first course, and that we believed we had a very powerful way of addressing the problems which are incorporated in domestic abuse. In my last talk about the DRIVE project, this is the executive summary of it, and here we have the, if I can just reach across and get that, we can have part one. You can see that I like to print things out so that I can write my notes on them, and here we have part two, which is the 190 pages altogether, which obviously is just too much to fit into one document holder like that, and my printer won't print both sides. And the executive summary then, which when I read it as a kind of advertising or a kind of money-raising venture to fund the DRIVE project. But if I read the DRIVE project, it says the evaluation of the DRIVE project, a 3-year pilot to address high-risk, high-harm perpetrators of domestic abuse. Now, I think it would be fair to say at this point that we tend to work not with the high risk, but with the medium and low risk. And by and large, those are people that you can engage in early intervention work. Whereas the high risk and the high harm abusers tend to have been through the court system, tend to have been found guilty by courts of violence and assault towards partners, and they're often then working out a prison or a probation sentence which has been required by the courts. So in my last talk on the subject of the DRIVE project, I highlighted some of the, I would describe them as insignificant differences which the perpetrator work, the abuser work, actually contributed to the outcomes of the DRIVE project itself. And I would say that those outcomes were, from the perpetrator content aspect, pretty negligible, even highly negligible. However, what I did notice when I was reading the 190 odd pages was that there were some quite important recognitions which had been made, and so those are the things which in this talk I'm briefly going to mention. So there was some good learning potentially to be taken from the DRIVE project. My observation would be that after 20 years, I would have certainly hoped that most of this learning would have been undertaken or taken up 15 years ago. So let me just scroll down now just to get the various points. So this is directly quoted from the DRIVE project. In year one, we reported that where direct challenge to service users by case managers had been conducted non-skillfully, that is, too directly or deploying shame, service users were quick to disengage, which in turn resulted in them imposing a higher risk. So in this report, they talk about disengaging. In other reports, which have also indicated very high dropout rates on these type of programs, they've referred to them as dropout rates. So in this program, they are disengaging. But what a recognition now, after 20 and 30 years of working with domestic abusers, that they are suddenly recognizing that if you deploy shame or you conduct yourself non-skillfully, that this causes service users to drop out. Point number 2, relationship building for behavior change. This is from page 43. Relationship building with service users by case managers came up as critical to cultivating and sustaining engagement. There we go then. So when you manage to engage and build a relationship with the clients, then they manage to remain engaged. Point number 3, a professional states, I would never sit like this opposite someone engaging the service user, engaging with the service user, because that kind of, in their head, frames that as an interview rather than a conversation. So I'll sit alongside them. How obvious is that? When we work, we tend to work in a circle. You sit alongside people, you don't sit opposite them. We are not in an us and them situation where we know all of the answers. We are facilitating their understanding of their own particular problems. The other perpetrator programs tend to have a classroom style where the abusers sit like in the classroom and the facilitators sit like at the front of the classroom. Decidedly, we know better than you, and if you follow what we say, then you will be all right. Largely utter rubbish. Differentiating drive, listening, care, non-judgment, page 44. While not a therapeutic intervention, heavens, why would they need to say that? The therapeutic character of drive, one-on-one work, to the extent that care managers practiced or embodied active listening, care and non-judgment, was reported by highly engaging service users as profoundly impactful. Wow, what a recognition that if you listen to people and you practice non-judgment, then that helps people to engage. After all of this time, it's very difficult to believe that that has not been observed beforehand and brought into practice. Point number 5. The drive cohort, getting service users to a place where it was possible to address deeply held attitudes and beliefs in relation to gender, masculinity and violence, seems to have only been possible for a small minority, and these types of activities were not commonly recalled by the service users who were interviewed, which is common across many interventions with perpetrators, I must add. More commonly recalled by service users and case managers was work around impulse control and emotional regulation. This work aims to open a space of reflection between stimulus and service user response in order, at its most basic, to help service users manage strong impulsive responses and, more profoundly, to enable connection perspectives of their own, as in the above case. In some cases, this also led to more gender-orientated work. Wow! Finally, a near admission of the findings of the late Ellen Pence, the Duluth guru, which she made in 1999. And if you're worried about just where that information comes from, this is the book edited by the late Ellen Pence, and this is what we read in 2005, 2006, and then I presented to the Respect organisers of the so-called Duluth programme, or its hybrid model, which runs in the UK. Has that been observed in 2009? Absolutely not. Here we are in 2021, and it's now beginning to make some kind of impact. Point number 6. Working with past trauma as a route to acknowledging the impact of abuse, especially for service users with children, cultivating some reflection on their own experiences of abuse, if relevant, seemed to be a critical tool mobilized by case managers to develop empathy and recognition of the impact of their behaviours on their children. And yes, I would say we knew that intrinsically and have been doing that since 1995. And hence more than 90% of the men and more than 95% of the women that we work with engage and stay engaged. But wow, from the point of view of the DRIVE project, what a recognition after just 30 years. My comment on all of this is that this was the old style, Duluth style perpetrator program and their take on the subject. The problem is that to hold and help to deal with such traumatic historical events takes much more training than the minimum 5 days advocated by Respect for facilitators. Counselling, as they say in the programme, in the DRIVE project report, counselling from trained domestic violence prevention programme DVPP facilitator. This one-to-one work was presented to service users as counselling and certainly had a therapeutic component. Back in 2016, the West Midlands Police Commissioner put some of the money at his disposal into a new project for domestic abusers. The project is called My Time. On the 21st of October 2021, the West Midlands Police Commissioner published quite a large document about the proud progress made by his investments. Obviously, My Time appeared in that, and so I'm going to focus your attention to some of the outcomes of what the West Midlands Police Commissioner recognised. But I'm going to do that in the next clip, and so I'm going to end this particular recording at this moment, wishing you all a happy new year and some freedom from the virus as soon as possible. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.